Hi there, Andrew Hobler here. As an introduction today, I just wanted to talk to you briefly about music reading. Why bother? Okay, and this is a question that I hear time and time again from students. And I guess it's got a lot to do with the fact that there's so much music available now on the internet that doesn't require music reading. It's either tab or it's a video, sometimes in slow motion, so you just copy what somebody else is doing and away you go. Unfortunately, there are many problems with just learning from tab. There are some guitar players who are genius guitar players. They don't need tab, they don't even need music, they don't even need to watch someone else play. They can just play from sound. So if we take a guitarist like the great Tommy Emmanuel, Tommy's been playing the guitar for a long time. He says that he could never put the guitar down when he was young, so he was always playing it. When he was growing up, one of the things that he did was he would listen to recordings, just about wear out the recording by going backwards and forwards on its tape or on his records, and just listening to the sound and working out what was going on. So consequently, he developed an excellent and amazing musical ear. The other thing that Tommy's developed, of course, is a fantastic technique. That's from playing and playing and playing. But of course he also has this natural ability. Again, no one can really teach you that, but if you work hard, you can learn how to play a lot of the things that you really want to play. So when we talk about players who don't read music, there are certainly some genius players who don't. Likewise, there are many genius players who do. So it's not an indication of whether you're a good player or not. It just simply means that if you do read music, you often can open yourself up to a whole lot more other styles of music and an understanding of the instrument. So if you're a genius, it doesn't really matter, you just play music. If you're not a genius, which I guess is the category that most of us probably fit into when it comes to our guitar playing, it's great to be able to use music to help you learn new things. It's also a great way of learning the instrument. One of the main reasons why we learn to read music is because it's communication, it's a language. When I talk about a language there, it's a language in two ways. So we've got the symbols, all of the musical symbols, crotchets and quarter notes and all that sort of stuff. We also have the language of music, the word part of music. So what do we call things? And that allows us to then communicate with other musicians in a very easy way because we understand what it means. Of course, music reading helps us understand the instrument better. We can find things quickly on the instrument. Tab is useful, but tab is really only useful for other guitarists. So what I mean by that is, if you play the guitar and you read a piece of tab, you go, yeah, that's fine, I can do that. If you give that same piece of tab to a piano player, you can probably guess what's going to happen. Unless they're very adept at the guitar, they're just going to look at it and go, I don't know what that means. Okay, so the written music form, standard music notation, is the way that most musicians understand music, and so that's what we're going to be concentrating on during the course. With a couple of exceptions, this whole course will be a tab-free zone. Okay, so there are a couple of exceptions to that, and that's really just to show you the position of a couple of notes in the early modules. After that, it's all just music reading. So it's okay if you print the music out and you want to write in the names of the notes, that's okay. You will get a bit tired of doing that, but it's okay to do that in the early stages just to help you with that. Music reading allows access to music that would otherwise not be available. So not everything is written out in tab. There are often beautiful pieces of music that are written out in music notation. So if you want to play them, you've got to learn how to read. Music reading can seem difficult if you haven't had much experience with it before. One of the things I've noticed with students is they'll sometimes bring in a very difficult piece of music and say, I don't think I can read music because I can't play this. And I'll say to them, well, how can you? You've never read music before and you're trying to play a Charlie Parker solo, or whatever it might be. So what we have to do as guitar players and musicians generally, if you haven't read music before, is to make sure that the music is simple, because there's a lot of stuff that we've got to think about when we're reading music. And one of the things we don't want is lots of complexity to make it difficult. So if the music itself is very complicated, particularly in the early stages, that's just going to defeat the purpose of it. One of the things I've also noticed about reading music is that there are various types of gigs that professional musicians do. So I guess at the moment I'm going to talk more about what musicians would be doing in a professional environment. But the same thing applies for amateurs as well, even for hobby guitarists. If you're playing around a campfire and you sing along with what you're playing, it's always good to just write down on the music maybe what your first one or two notes are to sing. That can help you. You can play those notes before you start, go, okay, that's the pitch I've got to start on, and then you'll know how to start your piece of music when you start singing it, so you won't sing it in the wrong key. Little things like that, that may be all that you use it for, but it's great if you can do that. It makes life a lot easier. So as far as doing different gigs go, we've got a few different kinds of things that we do. There's the kind where we learn every piece of music totally by ear. So I've got friends who play in bands and they play in cover bands, so they learn note for note whatever was happening on the recording, and that's what they do. So when you listen to them play, you go, well, I could be listening to the Eagles or Metallica or whatever, because they've learnt everything note for note. Sometimes they use music to help them with that, sometimes they use tab, sometimes they'll just watch a video and watch somebody else do it and they'll learn it note for note. Again, that's okay, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Whenever I've had to do that, I've nearly always written myself a little scratch chart for it. So I've written out a little chord chart, maybe some little, if there are some lines in there that I need to play, so that if I don't play that music for 2 or 3 years, which is very likely in the kind of work that I do, I can at least pick up the music again and go, oh yeah, that's right, that's how this went, and do a reasonable job of making the music sound right. So that's one kind of gig that we do. There's also lugging. Now lugging is an interesting one. I don't know whether that's a worldwide term, but it's certainly an Aussie term. And what it means is that we're just playing by sound, we're playing by ear. So if you're playing with other musicians, they may say to you, this one's in the key of F, you'll be right. And so you go, oh, okay, I'll have a go. And so we're using our knowledge of music theory in particular, we're using our knowledge of the instrument, and we're also using our ear, so our hearing. So there are a lot of things that combine together to enable us to be able to play in those kind of situations. While it's not directly related to music reading, I've found that my music reading skills and my music reading knowledge helps me even when I'm doing that, even though I may not have any music in front of me at all. It's all about having knowledge of the instrument. Another kind of gig that we do is often called a real book gig. Now a real book gig is an interesting one. A real book is a very fat book usually, and it's got maybe 500 songs in it. And the songs are written out with a melody line, written in music notation, never in tab, and above each of the melody notes, as it goes through, it's got the chords for each bar, chord symbols. And so our job as musicians there, we need to be able to read the notes. We do need to be able to, of course, read the chord symbols and play them. And we also need to be able to improvise and play with other people. The arrangements are often verbal. So the leader of your band might say, let's do a 3-6-2-5 chord sequence to begin. Okay, so if you're a musician, you should know what that means. All right, and it means a certain thing, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what we'll do. And you need to be able to understand what the different terminologies are. That's only just one example of many possibilities, so that you don't get lost in the music, and so you know what's going on. It's always more fun if you know what's going on. The fourth kind of gig that I wanted to talk to you about is about club acts. Okay, so singers maybe who perform in a club and they hire a band just to work with them for that one night or those 2 shows or 3 shows, that kind of thing. That's still a very common way for musicians to earn money. You have to be a good music reader because you often don't even get a rehearsal with those things. It's just they put the music chart up in front of you. Mostly it'll be a chord chart, but depending on the act, sometimes they have very specific solo kind of lines that they want you to play. What we'll need to be able to do there is to be able to play with no rehearsal. Sometimes we have a talk through, we call it a talk through, and that's where the singer or the leader of the act will say, okay, at bar 17 in the first song we'll need really strong drum fill into here or whatever. So it's all kind of done with a bit of a verbal talk through of the music, but we do need to be able to read music particularly well to do that. The fifth kind, and this is by no means covering every possible scenario for a band or for a duo or a guitarist, is musical theatre, where music reading is essential. Usually there's plenty of preparation time, so you may get a month to work on the music, maybe more, and so you work on the music, you learn the music, and so when it comes time for the first rehearsal, you pretty much know what you're doing. You don't want to be scrambling around trying to sight read in your first rehearsal. Your music reading and your playing has to be accurate. There's not much room for improvisation in those kind of settings. It's all about playing exactly what it says. There's never ever any tab. I've done heaps of musicals. Never ever have I seen tab. It's always music notation. And one of the reasons for that is that the conductor is often not a guitarist. So he wants to talk in music. He's got no idea what the notes are and where the frets are and what the positions are. But he wants to be able to say to you, that'll need to be an F note there. And so you've got to figure out what he's talking about. It will never be written down, first fret, first string. You never see that. So that's again why music reading is essential. So just work your way steadily and thoroughly through it, and it'll be great fun. I think you'll find that your skills will really improve. So I look forward to seeing you in the music reading course. It's available from www.andrewhobler.com.